Welcome to the Aro Benaiah Show, where we share the stories of hands-on entrepreneurs and creative doers who turn their passion into purpose. My guest today is Pape, a TEDx speaker, creative business strategy, and the man behind Gamify business. From being called a starving artist to working with Disney, Universal, and Nickelodeon, Paul has built a thriving creative career and is now teaching others how to turn their arts into adventure. Let's unpack the journey from theater design to creative entrepreneurship and how he's helping others build profitability playful business. Once again, Paul, it's a pleasure having you on the show.
No, thank you, Aro. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. So, Paul, what was it like growing up?
Oh man, it was interesting. I grew up in a time before I'm 50 years old, so I grew up in a time
Ooh,
before cell phones and all that fun stuff. So I grew up playing outside. I was a kid who used his imagination a lot. I rode a lot of bikes, and it was good. I grew up middle class, like lower middle class, and so I didn't have a lot of money, so didn't have a lot of things, but I had a lot of imagination and I had a lot of opportunity to play and to explore. So it was nice. And then eventually I found myself into the world of theater, and it allowed me to take that imagination and play a little bit further. And then eventually found my way into the design aspects of that. And that's actually where I did the majority of my work through school, is building and designing sets, props, and costumes for theater.
wow, amazing. So, how did your journey into theater design begin and what first sparked that passion?
Well, what sparked it is I was an actor and I was horrible at it. That's what happened. I
Uh,
was not good, but I wanted to do theater because I really enjoyed like the world of theater. And so I was actually told by a college professor that I wouldn't be able to act anymore because I wasn't very good at it. And so I had a mentor in the department who asked me, since I couldn't act, if I was interested in learning other aspects of theater, or basically said all aspects of theater. So I learned everything from janitorial to box office to construction as well as design. And when I was introduced to the design aspect of it, I really fell in love with it because it allowed me to use my imagination to create entire worlds. And then I was also at the same time working in the scene shop, which was the place where we built everything. So not only could I imagine the worlds, but I actually had the ability to use my hands to build the worlds and the sets around me. And so that was so as far as an introduction, it's kind of a rough one, but I
yeah,
fell in love with it and it ended up being pretty good. It worked out for me.
wow, that was really amazing. The fact that when being related, being an actor, you actually took the odd part, taking the odd job and everything. And yeah, definitely it seems at the end of the day, everything fits in. And yeah, pretty amazing. So when did you first realize that traditional business role uh, just didn't work for you as a creative?
That one was really interesting because as a designer in theater, you're up against two things. You never have a lot of money in theater design. It's just so you have to figure out creative ways of creating entire worlds, but with no money. And so that was kind of the initial impact of it, my introduction to it. And then when I was in graduate school, I was talking to a person I was assisting. And at the time, this man had like the top job in America as far as design went. And so I was asking him, I said, what's it like being at the top? And he actually said it's bad. I don't like it. And I was kind of thrown back. I was like, well, why is that? And he says, I don't make any money. I'm constantly, he said I was traveling 48 weeks out of the year. I pay for an apartment I'm never in. I'm constantly like on the road and paying for things because it doesn't pay. It's not a great living. And I was like, wow, like here I am at the bottom, just starting out. And I'm talking to a guy who's been doing this for 20 years and he's at the top and he's even telling me it's hard. And so that was like a real big eye opener for me as far as the potential that I had. And so I don't know. I'm a stubborn person by trait. If I don't think something's going to go my way, I'm gonna force my way through it. And so I'm like, there's got to be a way to kind of twist this so that it's not, because here's a guy who's at the very apex of his job and he's still a starving artist. And I'm like, that shouldn't be the case. I mean, he's been at this for 20 years. So I rethought my approach to it and decided that instead of just accepting that that's the way it has to be, I decided to challenge it and started to appreciate what I had to offer and then charge accordingly. And I think that once that happened, I actually got blacklisted from a lot of theaters because as a person who had a terminal degree, as an N degree in my design field, I felt like, well, I've done all the training, I've got the skills, I've won national and international awards for it. I should be paid for that level of work. And a lot of the theaters said, we don't pay for that. We pay, here's $200-$300, which for us in the States is it's beyond minimum. It's like a quarter of minimum wage. And so I was like, no, we're not going to do that. And so I actually branched out on my own and started doing my own work and using the skills that I got in theater and the versatility to be able to work with random materials, to be able to create wonderful things, to use my skills in that regard, and started actually making things for other people and companies. And since I worked for myself, I could set my wage. And because the product that I was creating was actually good, the companies that hire me, they don't haggle with me. They're like, oh, that's what it should cost. And so, but it's a mindset. It's 100% a mindset, and you've got to understand that the rules that are in place for people, for hardworking people, the rules that are in place are there not to support you. They're there to kind of keep you down, because we don't like to change. The people at the top are the ones making the money, and the people down at the bottom are the ones doing all the work. So I kind of helped to flip. Yeah. So I flipped that script, and so now what I do is I actually coach and consult people who are, I hate to say at the bottom, but the ones who are actually doing the work, and to say, no, appreciate what you have, offer it at the level that it should be paid at, and you'll work less, but you'll make more. And it's a weird thing for workers because we like to work. I mean, I assume you like to work. I'm
so true. Yeah.
And so it's like, well, why would I want to work less? Well, because you've got to understand the value in this. So what we do is, instead of like, well, I only work one job a month. No, you're still working, but now you're doing things that impassion you, things that are building your skills, things that you're interested in doing rather than the things that you have to do. And so it's a mind shift, and it's work, but it helps, and it gets you out of that being at the very bottom, and it allows you to understand that you have more value. Because at the end of the day, if it's not for the workers, things aren't getting done. Bureaucrats and administration aren't building anything. So we've got to be the ones. We're the ones who are doing it.
Yeah, amazing. I think this is very, very key, being that you take pride in what you do. Despite the route for you didn't actually come easy, but you being that you know what your strength is, and you know that, yeah, why don't I challenge what the norm is? Because I mean, imagine more like doing the whole of couples of job, and at the end of the day, viewing it from that particular higher person's perspective, and yeah, you are doing a whole lot, and we're seeing you, and in fact, we admire your work, your office, and things, and still what you're earning is not enough to go around. I'm like, wow, that must be a crazy office to be in.
Yeah.
So you have worked with huge brands like Disney, Universal, and Nickelodeon. What were those experiences like for an independent creative?
So I will say that I was a little starstruck when I first got my big call. I think the big company that I worked for first was Disney, and it was pretty daunting. I was excited because I had grown up with the Disney brand and knew that, working with them, they're a $1 trillion company. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great. But what I learned pretty much right off the bat is you're a cog in the machine. You aren't special, and they're hiring you because they want you to do something. I'll also say that they're very compartmentalized. So while I'm working for Disney, I'm working for like someone who's working for someone who's working for someone in Disney. Because there is such a large company, is really hard. I'm not talking to Bob Disney, I'm actually just working for some other company. But the work that I did ended up in the theme parks, which was really nice. But what I learned was that working for them, because they work in such a public facing intellectual property like IP, that anytime you're working with them, they have in their contract that any ideas that you come up with while you're under their contract, they own. So basically they own everything you do. And I had to be very careful because as an entrepreneur and I was an inventor at the time, the things that I was coming up with, the business ideas that I was generating, I had to make sure that I put them on hold while I was under that contract, because I wanted to make sure that they had no legal ability to kind of steal from me. Now, don't get me wrong. I went and saw the show when it was live, because I was working on a live show that they did there at Disney, and I went and saw it with my wife. We went there. We had no kids at the time, but it was a kids show. We sat in the audience with the rest of the kids, and loved it. And it was magical and it was fun and it was really cool to be able to see my work represented in such a public venue. But at the end of the day, it's just a job that pays a little
Yeah.
bit better is what it
Yeah.
is.
Amazing. Amazing. And so what lessons do you learn away from those collaborators with such a massive company that you now share with other artists?
Read read, understand your contracts. That's a huge one. If you are, because we get, like I said, we get starstruck because we're working with this huge entity that, we've known all of our lives. And it's the same with Nickelodeon, it's Universal, it's all of those places. I mean, we've seen the movies, we've seen the TV shows, we know their intellectual property. And so what happens is we get excited because now we have the opportunity to work with this company, but they have so many lawyers invested in making sure that they're protected, not you, that you've really got to read through what you're doing. And sometimes, and I've done it, you got to walk away because the contract isn't in your favor. And so that's a big one. So don't get so starstruck for the opportunity. But if you do decide to go that route and you've got to protect yourself and you're willing to take the contract like I did, what I recommend is you make sure you're compensated for that ability. So if they're coming to you to hire you, make sure that if they're going to hold you to some really stringent rules, that you actually get compensated for it. So make them tack another zero onto that paycheck because you're losing something while under those contracts. So
Yeah.
make sure that you're gaining something in return. So the biggest one is just make sure you understand what you're getting into.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. Thanks for sharing that. I love how you describe turning business planning into character creation. Can you explain what that means for those who are new to your concept?
Okay, so what you're talking about is gamifying your business, which
Yeah.
I love this. So I was working with some people and they weren't understanding traditional business advice. I mean, and honestly, when I started out, I didn't either. I kind of had to learn it and I learned it through failure. I learned it through messing up over and over again. And so I was working with this company and they just really didn't grasp what was going on with their business. They were earning a lot of money gross, which they were selling a lot of product, but when it came down to the money that they were keeping and able to spend on their bills, the net part of it, they were not making any money. And so they were kind of gaming nerds at the time, and I'm a gaming nerd myself. And so I was like, let's play a game version of your business. And so it's called Dungeons and Dragons Business Edition is what we were playing. And when I started talking about business, but through a gaming slant, they understood the concept so much better. Everything started to click. You saw the light bulbs going off in their eyes. And so from that kind of gave me the idea to create this gamification of business. And so what we do now is we create a character sheet. We characterize you in your business. And what that allows us to do is to really take a good look at who you are as a person, as an entrepreneur, as a business, as a worker, and what your skill sets are. And so we need to understand who we are and what we have to offer before we go out and start selling stuff. Because if we don't know who we are, we're just going to kind of offer whatever and hope that it sticks. And that's where a lot of businesses end up failing, is because they're not clear on what their mission is. And so what we do is we actually break all that information down onto a character sheet, because we like to do things in games, because everybody games, we all understand the gaming ideas. And so what we do is we look at what you're passionate about, how you want to approach this as a business, and then what your skills are. And so knowing that, we can find people to help supplement it, to help build your business up, because they complement the areas where you're possibly weaker. And then you have skill sets that are better than theirs. And so you make a well-rounded business out of that. So that's what the characterization is about.
Wow, that was really, really amazing. So how does your gaming-based approach help creative overcome the fear of confusion that come with business and marketing?
Well, so a lot of business marketing has, I mean, like every business. I mean, I used to work construction and we'd have short term for a lot of stuff because you don't have time to get into the details of it.
Yeah.
And business, unfortunately, has the exact same thing. And so we talk about things like ROAS, or we talk about, which is return on ad spend, or we talk about, your marketing pitch deck and all this. And for people who don't grow up in that or haven't been trained in those terminologies, it's confusing and daunting. It's like, I don't feel like climbing a mountain today. And so I'm just not going to even try. And that's what stops a lot of businesses. And so what I did is I actually went through the book. And when I was creating the book, I took those same terms and I turned them into something that we do understand and recognize. And it was all about accessibility, because it's not complex. I mean, kids create lemonade stands on the side of the road. That's entrepreneurship. And if we can do that, then you can run your own business. It's not complicated, but because of it's considered an adult thing or it's a real job, they make it complicated on purpose. And because then it's a badge of honor to be successful in that. I don't like that. I'm like, I want everyone to be successful. So it's like, why don't we level it out? And it's not an elitist game. It's for anyone. And so that's what I worked really hard on, was accessibility to not just the language, but to the ideas and the mechanics of business, so that they can understand it. It just makes it easier for them to get into. And it makes it less scary, but I also want to make sure it's fun. Because I mean, if you work 5 days a week and you get the weekend off, that's 5/7 of your life that you're doing something. And if you don't like it, you're wasting 5/7 of your life doing something that you hate. Like, why do that? So I try to make business fun as well, so that when you're doing this, you're like, it's a challenge, but then there's a reward. And it's just like playing a video game. We all sit down and we play, and we know that, oh, if I kill this many beasts, I'm going to get this new armor or this new sword or whatever. And it's the same thing in business. If we get this many clients accomplished, then we earn this much profit. And it's a psychological thing and it's a chemical thing. We've heard of the carrot and the stick, and it's the exact same thing. It's dopamine is released when we do something that gives us a micro reward. When we're scrolling through our phones, every time we swipe, it's not the visual that we're actually getting dopamine from. It's the mechanics of moving your finger up and down. And so that dopamine release is what I'm really working on. So if we can eliminate the complexity of it, but then also give us the reward that comes with doing a good job, then it motivates people. It makes it accessible and motivates them to be able to be more successful at it.
Wow, amazing, amazing. Thanks for actually sharing that. So what inspired you, what inspired the idea of Gamify business, and how did it evolve into a full coaching framework?
So what inspired me was that group that I was talking about earlier. They just weren't understanding it, because I had spent, it's like 6 or 7 years actually talking to creatives and creative minded people on a platform called Twitch, which is a gaming platform for live video game playing, but there's also artists on there doing their work. And I was on there for 5 days a week, for about 5 to 6 hours a day, just doing what I do for a job as Pape Designs. And while I had live audience, and they would come in and they would ask me, like, how do I do this? How do I figure out what to charge? How do I, do X, Y, and Z? And eventually I was like, I keep answering the questions over and over again for new people. So I'm like, why don't I just start coaching people as well, to kind of give them the answer in a forum? And so I was doing that, but I was explaining it as best I could. I was trying to adjust it for how everybody, like, because I customize a lot of stuff. So if somebody was they're really into cars, I would use car analogies, or if they're really into gaming, I'd use gaming analogies. But what I found out was that gaming is pretty universal. And so I didn't have to constantly adjust how I approached explanation. I could just use this framework. I still adjust it from time to time, because, some people, they're just not really big into gaming,
Yeah.
but the concepts are still there. And so I spent 20 years doing everything custom. So I figure, if they're hiring me as an individual, I will actually speak to them in a language they can understand, because it's all about interpretation. If I was speaking French right now and you didn't speak French, this would be a really awkward conversation.
Yeah,
So,
so true.
right. So, and it's the same thing in business. If I was trying to help you understand business, but I was speaking in a language you didn't get, and you had to go and translate it every time we had a conversation, it would be really difficult, and most people would give up. And so it's all about that translation and being able to speak on a level in a language that they understand.
Wow, amazing. Language they understand. I think it's very, very key. Learning business from the perspective of a gaming, it just make every of those part of the business being dominant, being that you see where you are losing, what could actually change, what you could do different, and what's different you could make once you execute some particular things in there. And that was really, really amazing. So many creatives struggle with pricing, and you talk about pricing art like magic item. Can you unpack
Yes.
that idea?
Well, that's the cool thing about what craftsmen do. So we're in the Industrial Revolution really kind of changed how we used to do things. So before the Industrial Revolution, before we had machines mass producing things, we used to have artisans who would spend all day long making nails. Like that's what the blacksmith did. They would make nails all day long. Or they would have the person who, the potter who would make dishes all day long. The Industrial Revolution came along. We had then machines that would take over that. So the blacksmith didn't have to make nails. And they're like, well, I'm a blacksmith. What do I do? Well, they started making other things, but they became more bespoke. They became custom pieces. And artisans now we're way past Industrial Revolution. Now we're into like the AI revolution, and people are concerned about their jobs being lost that way. People who work with their hands are a rare breed. What we do is so special. And I know we've just gotten to the point where we expect things to be the way they are, and no one goes out to work with their hands anymore.
Yeah.
And they don't understand like how much skill that actually takes. And so when we're pricing, we have to keep that in consideration. While your customer may think they're getting prices super, super cheap, here in the States, we call it the Amazon or Walmart pricing, where you can get everything for $1. But the reality is an artisan needs to be compensated for that. And so when I'm talking about pricing and pricing your work as magical items, it's not that we're making things that you can buy for $1 and expecting to make $100 off of it. What we make are the things that cannot be mass produced, that are custom, that are bespoke, that are artisanal, and that is a magic item. It's something that you just can't go get somewhere off the shelf. You actually have to have someone with skills to produce it. That costs something. Can't be done for the price of the dollar object that we buy at the store. It has to be priced accordingly. And so when I talk about pricing with my clients, what I do is I say, think about yourself on a timeline, and it's a scale of 1 to 10. And 1 to 4 is where you're learning the skill. You're not at a place yet where you can actually charge somebody for it. And so you're still in that learning. But once you hit that number 5, you've got the skills where you feel like I could sell something because I'm good enough at my job.
Yeah.
And so that right there is where we start. So it goes from 5 to 10. And from 5 to 10, that's where your growth and your pricing comes into play. So at 5, what I tell my clients here in the States is we have a minimum wage, which is the amount that they're going to pay you if you go get your very first job. So for us, it'd be like fast food workers, or if you're doing manual labor, if you're doing, working construction, it's typically the lowest amount that we're required to pay by our law. And so that's minimum wage. So I say, if you're going to start to sell something based on your skill set, you should price your labor at least that price, because if you're under that, you might as well go get that job because it's going to pay you better than what you're doing right now. But then as you progress, as you get faster, better, as your skill evolves and you become better at your job, your price has to increase to account for it. And when customers or clients think about that, they get confused because they're like, I don't understand where that point is where I need to increase my price. And so what I did is I like to use this analogy. So say, Aro, you're at 5 and you're just starting to sell things, and you're selling them for, we'll say 10 an hour is what your hourly rate is. And then it takes you 5 hours to make something. So you're going to charge $50 to make that object. And then 3 years down the line, you're making the exact same object, but you've gotten a lot better at it. You're faster at it. Now it only takes you 2.5 hours. Well, that's only 25 at your current rate. Well, why should slower, older you make less money than faster, more skilled you? You should at least be making as much. So it should still be 50 as the price. Well, now you're doing it at half the time. Well, now your price needs to increase to match that. And honestly, it should go up, because I can guarantee you, if you've spent that much time working on this object over 2.5 years, the object's gotten better. It's not just the exact same thing. Your skill is increased. You're not cutting corners. You can do things faster, but better. And so then the object should be 60, 70. And that's how we have to view it. Never make less than old you. That's the point. Always make more. It's like that's how we figure it out.
Yeah, it's very, very lovely, especially the way you just explained it, arriving at the price, because sometimes as a craftsman, it can be so daunting when it comes to naming your price or into sometimes you might feel guilty that wow, do I need to charge this much? How did I come to arrive like this? So the fact that you actually make reference to the procedure and how your skill levels increase with number of time and viewing it from the hourly rates, it just speaks volumes to you just making a definition of how each of the particular stage come into being. It's easier to charge in this particular way without feeling guilty, being that you know that okay, difference has arrived and my consistency has shaping my skill in this particular thing. And now I could actually do much within this limited time. So I should get much
Yeah,
too. And this is really lovely.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I watch videos online of people in India or Pakistan, Africa, where they're so talented and they're just knocking stuff out left and right. And I'm like, I hope they're being compensated for this, because the ability to do it as fast, efficiently, and
Yeah.
as skillful as they do it, I'm like, machines aren't doing that. People are.
Yeah.
And that's a skill. And those skills should be compensated for, I believe. But
Yeah.
I also understand it's the real world. And sadly, the people at the top aren't going to pay much more. They
Yeah.
should. They should. And that's what I really fight for these days, is the starving artists should go away. We should be compensating for the skills that we actually have.
So true, and this is really amazing. And I hope when they see this, they will leave the traditional means and charge more. All right. So how can creative persons identify their version of 100 true fans and people who truly support their work?
So we all fall into, because we all have phones or the internet, and we all fall into the trap of social media, where we think that any time that we put our work out there, it needs to get 1 million likes, it needs to have 1 million fans behind it. But that's such a falsehood, because those likes are not dollars. It's not money. It doesn't equate equally. So and I keep telling people that, I'm like, your social media is just, because we mindlessly like, yeah, I like that. Okay, I like that. And we're not doing anything with it. We're not buying anything. We're not doing anything with it. And so what I tell people is that you need to have only 100 fans. If you're very passionate about something and you're good at it, there are 100 people in this world filled with 8.3 billion people that will also like it, appreciate it, and pay you correctly for it. And so you don't need to go out there and try and impress millions of people. You need to go out there and impress 100. The best way to understand who that person is it's you, just in a different body. You are very passionate about the thing that you're making. You're putting your blood, sweat, and tears into it. So then you should also be finding somebody who has that same appreciation for the thing that you like. So look for people who are similar to you, who would appreciate the work that you're putting into it. You know, I create very nerdy looking things here, and I wouldn't go to a guy who isn't
really
into
lovely.
this. Yeah. But I wouldn't try and sell this to somebody who isn't into nerdy stuff, because they're going to be like, it's trash. It's not worth anything to me. And I'm like, of course it's not, because you have no interest in this. But let me tell you, there are lots of nerds out there who really love this, and the quality of the work that I'm creating and the ability for me to make something that is not available at the store, that's kind of what led me to be called Santa for Nerds. And it's because it is something that really speaks to them. So I had to, and don't get me wrong, I still am like, oh, I wish my post would have gotten more likes or whatever. I mean, because we all are, you know, it's conditioning. It's because it's all around us that we have to have these huge numbers. But the reality is, and I know it intellectually, but in my heart, you know, you kind of wish for the millions, the everything. You want it to go viral. That's what everybody wants. But the reality is that it doesn't need to. You need to find the people who are just willing to support you because they love what you do.
Yeah, and this is really, really amazing viewing it from this particular end, because a whole lot of creative they use how many like and how many followers they have as a basis for their credibility, a basis for them keeping showing up, a basis for them doing more or doing less. And it's a very, very more like, how will I say, it's a very disadvantaged place to be, being that you don't really need this particular thing. And I think there was this particular code that usually guide me over time, that sometimes when I post online, what all I'm looking out for is just an audience of one. And once I see one, I'm already energized to feel the next thing, which I know the others will catch up. Yeah, they will definitely catch up. And by then I will have moved into a different level, but I'm glad they're catching up.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the best attitude to have for it, because that's success at one person. You're like, I've done it. I've accomplished something because I've affected the one person who needed to be affected by it. And you're putting it out there and you're hoping that other people will latch onto it. But as long as you understand, like truly understand that it's not for everyone, and that's okay, because there's nothing in this world that is good for everyone. And as long as you understand that, you're not upset or depressed by the fact that you're not seeing these astronomical numbers come through. I've seen many people who chase the likes. They're the ones that's all they're looking for. And eventually, they'll get some money from advertising and stuff for it. But what happens is they stop doing anything because they love it. They're just doing it to chase that number.
Yeah,
And they become a shell of a person. It's
yeah,
not fun anymore.
so true.
Yeah, it's boring.
So true. Amazing, amazing. So you have been teaching this idea that business should think more like creativity. What do you mean by this exactly?
So business should be more like creativity. There's a saying that we do things because it's the way it's always been done. And I hate that saying because the way it was always done is because one guy back in the day did something right and it worked. And then somebody's like, hey, that guy did it right, so we're going to copy that. But the problem is it didn't work that way. I can guarantee you've had a job where you were hired because somebody quit the job or moved on or got promoted or whatever. And they're like, okay, this is how that guy did it. And I want you to do the exact same thing. And you're like, okay. And for the first week, you might have done it that exact same way. But then you're like, nah, it's easier if I do it this way. This is a lot easier on my back if I'm not lifting it like that. There are other ways. And so you adjust it, you tweak it, you're constantly doing it to make it better for you. And as much as we do it the way it used to be done, we're constantly changing it. And so why are we stuck in this idea that it has to be that way? Well, because it's a factor of control. Management can say, do it this way because we know this way works. But what they don't understand is that their employees, the workers, are actually changing it constantly to adjust to them so that they're more interested. Because we are people, we're not machines. And so we're going to do things, and we're all individuals. So we're going to do them the way that we want to do them. And so we need to think more creatively. If we got rid of the process, the mandatory restriction on process to say it has to be done exactly this way, but instead started saying, we would like this goal. Get to there however you want, as long as it doesn't cost more money to do it. It might take you a little bit longer, but if you can get faster and more skilled at it and you get the result is the same, who cares about the process? So think more creatively like that. And then it allows, what that does is it allows ownership of your job. If you started a job and they're like, we just need this done. We don't care how you do it. As long as it's done right, it's safe and it's good. We don't care how you do it. You as a person are going to take ownership of that. You're like, I did this and I did it without being told how to do it. That's such a boon for us. We love that. We're like, I made this with my own two hands. I did it my way. And this is all me. Who wouldn't love that as an employee? So then it takes that drain. It makes business fun again.
Yeah.
Because it gives you that enjoyment of doing something and having ownership of it. And so it really personalizes it. So that's really what I'm trying to do is adjust it from being this linear, rigid approach to being something that's a little bit more amorphous, a little bit more cloud-like, a little bit more fun. But the results are the same. We're just now including the people in it because we're not machines.
Yeah. And I think what you just said is really amazing. Being that, the basis should just be learn the first principle of what that thing it is, right? Yeah, do it your own way and achieve the result. And there is this quote of I think Steve Jobs that speaks volumes to this. I think he was trying to make reference of that at the point where you get to realize that everything that now exists that we get to see today, or the fact that people were actually those ones who actually change it to what it has become. Just a way of more like saying that everything that you see now that now exists was owing to the thought of a particular person who think different, who think they could actually more like achieve the culture, achieve what is obtainable and everything. They were the one who actually achieve it. So you viewing it as a creative from that particular end just shapes your idea to a kind of perspective that how can I shape the world owing to the skill level I have? How can I shape it to a different level owing to the fact that you have not come to accept the fact that everything that now exists is owing to someone believing themselves to think, we can do this, we can change it this way, we can change it this way. And that's what we're making reference of. The world is changing and it's owing to people are taking responsibility and making waves, and we are catching up. So while we are catching up, we need to add our own creativities to it so that at the end of the people are catching up to it. It's just our more like adding our own two set of creativity that make the world a better place at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And now with AI coming in and computers being smarter and able to do more of the job, it leaves humanity to be more creative. And it gives us the ability to have time to reflect and to do more things. We become more magical the more the like more computers and machines take over the mundane jobs. We are elevating ourselves as a species. The entire planet is coming up if people allow it. And that's the problem, is we have so many people who don't want us to elevate. They want to keep it the same. And it's like, do you know how good we could be if we worked in a society in which we tried to elevate everyone up rather than a few people staying at the top and pushing everyone else down? We would be so much further ahead than we are as a species. So it's, I think it's very important that we try that.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. And I think it's very lovely way of looking at it, viewing creativity to the fact that, a whole lot of things are now available and we can change the whole world out in our own little corner by learning what the business is and then improving on it. And owing to every of these particular skills we have learned, we could actually more like change how people perceive work, do it faster, do it better, and do it in a very, in a lovely way. Yeah, thank you. So, what are some of the most common mistakes you see young creative and trade people make when they try to monetize their skill?
Trying to please everybody. That's really what it comes down to. I'm going to make this thing and everybody's going to like it. And then I'm going to market it to everybody. And the thing is like we said before, it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
And so they spend a lot of time trying to appeal to so many people because that's what we see as the market standard. We see products like Coke or McDonald's or whatever, Nike or Adidas, all of these products that are marketing to everybody. They're spending millions and millions and millions of dollars trying to appeal to everybody so that it becomes this thing that everybody wants. But the problem is when people are starting out, especially as artisans, we don't have that kind of money. And if we did, we probably aren't working as artisans. We're not trying to earn money. We've already got the money. So what we need to do is we need to really think about how it is that who it is that we're really trying to think of. And so that's the biggest one. The other one is expanding too fast. We think we've had this one success, this one viral thing that we've done. Well, I'm just going to keep doing that. And now I'm going to do it like 10 times over. And the problem is that takes so much more time and money. And what actually happens is then it was either a fad or your market gets saturated. There's only so many people who want it. And then you start to lose money. And so the idea is to just kind of stay passionate with what you have, find the ideal people to sell it to, and just keep doing that. It will grow as it goes on, as it becomes more understood as to what you do. It slowly starts to grow out there, but you don't need to rush it and you don't need to appeal to everybody. So those are the two biggest things that I would say mistakes people make.
Amazing. I think it's very, very key because a whole lot of startup will die on to scaling or into expansion. And the fact that they like credibility, they want everybody to like them. And I just a creative and you definitely appeal to a set of people, not everybody. Knowing this is knowing peace. And I think it's very, very key. So you have built a business that feel authentic and fun. What mindset shift will help you move from struggling artist to trivial entrepreneur?
Now, I will admit, I've been doing this for a long time. I still have those moments of like, man, it's just, it doesn't go away because we always want to move ourselves forward. But the mind shift that I've had is somebody explained to me this really simplistic way of looking at skill level and where we are. And it's a straight line, like a ruler. Okay. And you are always going to be in the middle of the ruler. And there's always going to be someone better than you or someone who's going to be achieving more ahead of you. But there's always someone who looks at you as that person. So while the scale is constantly moving, you're always in the center, you're always going to try and achieve more. And you're always looking forward. You're like, man, I wish I was more like that guy. I wanted to be that guy. But you don't recognize that there's someone right behind you who's like, I really wish I was you. And so that was the mind shift that really took me to that new level. It's like, I definitely thought, oh, I'm not a good enough artist. I'm not a good enough craftsperson, whatever, because I can see these other people online or whatever that I've met in person. They're just so much better at it for me. But then I talk to them and they're like, yeah, well, there's this other guy who's better than me. And then I look behind me and I have so many people who are like, I really wish I could be you. And I'm like, really? I don't think I'm that different because I can't see outside of the sphere that I'm in. But I do interviews like this, or I have people come to my studio and they see this wall. And what you don't see is this is actually 20 feet wide and it
Whoop.
is just filled. Yeah, it's huge. And it is filled with all these things. And I've had to start telling people who come to the studio, I said, write your questions down before you come here, because once you see the nerd wall, which is what I call this thing, you will forget everything that you're going to say. And they're like, no, I won't. They do. They walk down, they're like, whoa, what's this? And it's fun. But that really like opens up my eyes. I'm like, I actually am kind of cool. I made some cool stuff, but you don't like to admit that, that ego thing gets in your way.
Yeah,
But
so
that's
true.
what we have to understand is that the mindset that we're always looking forward to what we want to be, but never really understanding where we are, and that where we are, we've achieved something because there are people who are trying to get to where we're at. And so just keep that in mind wherever you're at. Always strive for that thing, but every once in a while, take a look back and see who's there looking to you because you're the expert that they want to be.
Amazing, amazing. You are the experts that they want to be. And yeah, that was
That's right.
really, yeah, thank you. So, what has been one of the hardest moments on your journey, and how did you get through it?
I got to say, and I hate that it always comes down to this, but it always comes down to money. There are definitely been some times when, as an entrepreneur, my wife has what we call a real job. She goes to a 9 to 5 and then she comes home. So she earns a steady income. But as an entrepreneur, there's no such thing as a steady income. It's feast or famine, right?
Yeah.
And there were definitely some times where the famine was lasting a lot longer than I thought it should. And I was working hard. And what happened was I had found myself in this place where I was not charging enough, but I was trying to attract anybody who would buy from me. And what I found is I was getting more and more customers that were horrible, and they would talk down to me. They were derogatory. It was like a mental drain as well as a financial drain because I was working really hard, not earning enough, and having to deal with really horrible people at the same time. And that was probably the darkest part of it. And what changed this, and I know it sounds ridiculous to say it out loud, but what changed it was I doubled my prices. I doubled them when I was like, I'm done. I'm just doubling it because I can't keep doing this. And what happened is all the people who were horrible didn't want to pay what it's worth. But the people who did truly valued what they were getting. And there's a common misconception within business and like speaking or being an expert on something is that if you value something too low, people view it as being worthless. And so it's not, and so you've got it, there's a perfect pricing that something has to be at that is just a little bit uncomfortable to purchase so that it has more value. Because if it was really cheap, we don't care about it. And if it's pennies or whatever, we're like, we don't care. And so we'll throw it away. But if we have to pay something that it hurts a little bit to pay because it's just a little bit more expensive, then we value it more. And it was a hard lesson to learn. So that was what took me out of that dark place. But the reality is feast and famine is a real thing as an entrepreneur, and you just gotta have to work around it.
Wow, that was really, really amazing. And yeah, especially when you make reference of the feast and the farming, it just speak volumes to what entrepreneurship is. Being that, yeah, it's not easy. It's everyday hard work, and sometimes the payouts might not be as compensation with the putting in. But when the feast comes in, definitely it's more dominant compared to other stuff most times. Yeah, for someone listening who just starting out, maybe a craftsman, designer, or painter, what is the first step to turning their skills into a sustainable business?
First step is I want you to answer two questions. This is going to be a two-part answer to what you're asking here. And this is actually one of the first things that I teach in my gamification books. You need to know, one, what you're passionate about. This should be a pretty easy one because you're going to try and make something, you want to get into it. That's cool. The second one is the hard one. It's what do you do with that passion that nobody else does? Okay. If you can answer that question, that's your entire business. And what it does is it niches you down. It narrows down the field in which you're in. So you stop trying to appeal to everybody, but instead you're appealing to your narrower market. It's not tiny market, it's just a narrow market. And that's how you find your 100 people. But if you can answer those two questions, the first one's easy, the second one's a little bit more difficult. If you can answer those, you've got your business right there. And stay with it. The second part to this that I would say is that, and this is actually what I was going to say before, which I forgot.
Yeah.
Is that in this, when you're starting out because you're passionate about something. You love what you're doing and you want to share that with other people. Don't get into business for fame or fortune. Get into business for the passion behind it, because that is going to sustain you when you're in those moments of famine. Because there are going to be times when you have neither money nor fame, but something's going to keep driving you forward. And that has to be the passion that's behind it. If you stop loving what you're doing, stop doing it. Or stop doing it long enough to find out why and go back to the reason you love doing it in the first place. If it's just another slog or a job that you just have to do because that's what you're doing, get out of it. There's no point, because that passion is a superpower. I don't understand how it works, but when you're confident and you're passionate about what you do, people can sense that and they want to get behind it. They're like, oh, that's okay. And it's a superpower. I don't know what it is, but it works. But if you hate your work, if you're a little black cloud, people also sense that. And so,
Yeah.
and they don't want to work with you, and so be joyous, and don't get me wrong, business is hard. And so you're going to have ups and downs. That's just the way of life. But, have that passion, that fire behind it, and let that be the thing that leads you. The fame and fortune comes from that. We talk about kids these days want to be YouTube influencers or TikTok influencers. An influencer is somebody who is passionate about something who can influence others on it. It's not just somebody who gets on and just starts talking about random things. Find that passion and run with it.
Wow. Find that passion and run with it. And I think it's very, very key when it comes to passion, because there is how this book defined it, The Alchemist. And I think it will make a reference of passion that, passion is more like a language that the whole world understands. They might not be able to define it in words, but even if we don't speak similar language, once you see it in others, it's more like a rhythm that once you start beating, everybody around knows what it is. And it's more like a sugar gathering out all around it. And once it start coming up, people sense it and they buy into it.
Yeah, they do. Absolutely.
Starting from that, it's really, really very key. And finally, Paul, after 20 years of proving that creativities and business can thrive together, what does success look like for you today?
I love my job. I love my job. I really do. I have never woken up and thought, oh man, I got to go to work today. I don't have weekends. Like every day is a weekend for me because my job is great. And I work hard. Don't get me wrong. I work hard, but I love what I do. And that's, to me, is the success. I have a decent living. I have a house. I have 3 kids. I have a wife. We're happy. Things are okay. Money can be tight sometimes. Okay. But I was ordering food one day, sitting in my car. I was ordering food and I was talking, and I was just placing an order to get some food. The car behind me leaned his head out and he goes, "Are you Paul Pape?" And I went, "What?" He goes, "I know your voice. You're Paul Pape." And it's like, what a weird thing to have happen. So it's like, I've made it. Somebody randomly recognized me. So it's just weird. So I guess there's the success in that. But I mean, the reality is I still love what I do after 20 years. And it's changed, it's evolved, it's become this. And now I'm helping other people, which I really love doing because I want them to have the same life that I have and to not feel like you have to be stuck, because this is, unfortunately, unlike a video game, you got one life here, guys. Play it to the best of your ability. This is your adventure. Be the hero. Don't be a non-playing character. That's the whole key. Don't sit idle in your own life. Take advantage of every moment you can and just live it and love it.
Wow. Live it, love it. This is just people when they were like, go TV. Live it, love it. And it's really a lovely, amazing when I'm watching them all like that. Yeah, showing up, being the heroes in the character, not just someone in the corp that people are pitying, just feeling. Yeah, it shouldn't. It should be the heroes in your character, moving the chest here and there, and depending on how you actually want it, and this really speak volume. And I'm glad we have the conversation. So, Paul, where can my audience connect with you? How can they know more about you, and where can they do business with you?
If they would like to learn more about gamifying your business, you can go to gamifybusiness.com. And if you go to gamifybusiness.com/podcast, you can actually download the first 2 chapters of my book for free. I'm
Wow.
also available online everywhere as Paul Pape Designs. Or if you want to watch my TEDx, it's Santa for Nerds. You can just go look for TEDx Santa for Nerds on YouTube. You can find me there. But I'm just everywhere. And honestly, if you want to drop me a line and just ask me questions, it will be me who answers. I love chatting with people. And if you're a creative
Wow.
who wants to know what the next step is, just get in contact. Go to any of the places that I just mentioned. Drop me a line. I will be the one who answers it.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. I'm glad that we had this conversation, Paul. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're
That
very
was
welcome.
powerful. Thank you for showing us that creativities and business aren't opposites, but they are partners. The same adventure. Your stories remind us that being creative entrepreneurs is not about chasing fame. It's about finding purpose in the work you love. To everyone listening, you can check out our Paul free resources at gamifybusiness.com/podcast. It's a great way to start your own creative journey but with practical tools. You have been listening to the Aro Benaiah Show, where we celebrate the builders, our makers, and dreamers shaping the world with their hands and hearts. I'm the host of the Aro Benaiah Show. Until next time, keep learning, keep creating, and keep building your stories. Once again, it's a pleasure having you, Paul.
It was an absolute pleasure being here. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.